Alrighty, so today we're going to go through a bunch of lunchbox sort of bento box style containers using Blender, which is a 3D modeling program. The first thing I'm going to say is that I'm going to be brushing over just a handful of basic tools. If you want more detail on those tools, you need to go back to that original Blender introduction that I produced, which just gets you familiar with the texturing, with the grab, the rotate, the scale, and those X, Y, and Z axes, because they're really, really pivotal to making a model using Blender. So familiarize yourself with that. If you have done so, let's get started and we'll start producing some lunchbox kind of bento style boxes. Now, I'm going to produce 4 of these, so I'm going to kind of just gently increase the complexity each time. So we're going to start with a really nice basic one, and then we're just sort of going to see if we can just increase the nuance, increase the complexity each time around till we get to a more complex kind of refined, professional looking lunchbox. So let's get started. So we're in Blender 3. There is a Blender 4, so the controls look a little bit different. So you kind of need to, if you've got Blender 4 installed, you're just going to need to just look around a little bit more to find some things that might not be in the same spot as what I'm showing, or might be in slightly different spots. All right, so let's get started. So we've got this, and we're just going to start by clicking General. So what that leaves us with is our little box. Now I'm going to zoom in here. You can zoom in like this. You can kind of rotate around however you like. This is the sort of stuff that you're going to be learning in that initial tutorial. So if you're really feeling lost at sea, you want to go back to that and just watch that. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to G for grab, Z for up and down, and 1, and then hit the enter button. Now what that does is it puts our box kind of on the plane as opposed to halfway through the plane. So that's really important to kind of set that precedent that things are sitting on the ground. And then what I'm going to do is, see this little kind of 3D cursor here? I want this to represent where the box goes. See, if I scale it now, it's going to scale kind of in towards itself. I want to be able to scale downwards towards this flat bit here. So I'm going to click Object, Set Origin, Origin to 3D cursor. Now, if I S for scale, Z for up and down, as I shrink it, it's just going to shrink and it just stays flush with that bottom there. All right, so what we've got now is we've got our little base, SZ. I'm just going to shrink that down. Now, we're going to start really, really simple. I'm going to click on my little box here, hit the tab button to get into edit mode, and I'm just going to inset faces here. I'm going to click on my little face tool here, click on the top face, and just gently inset that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to grab our little loop cut tool. We're going to click on the Z so we're looking straight up above it. And as you can see, as I hover over, it's going to give me a loop cut. So I'm just going to click and drag a little bit down, and then I'm just going to click and drag another one so that you end up with this cut through the middle that's just roughly the same kind of width as what you've set your inset to. Now I'm going to do the same for this side as well. So cutting, dragging it a little bit across. So this is just going to be a 4-quadrant little bento box. Something like that. So there we have it. We've started cutting that up. Now what we want to do is we want to raise that so that we're creating the walls of our bento box. So I'm going to go back to the Z button. I'm going to go back to my tab. I'm going to select my little thing here, select this little face, select the whole thing. So I'm selecting the whole top of the box, and holding Shift, I'm going to deselect the bits that I don't want to turn into walls. Now, all I need to do is hit the E button, and we've effectively created our very, very basic bento box. Couple of very, very small things I'm going to do here to just sort of build it out just that little bit more refinement. I'm going to hit on my little spanner tool over here, which is my modifier. Click on Add Modifiers. Now this is different in Blender 4, so you just need to look around a little bit more, but it's still within that spanner, so you should be able to find it. Bevel here. And what that does is if we zoom in, we change our little segments over here. And what it does is it just gives it a nice little kind of roundness on the edges. So sort of see how it's just kind of rounding off those edges, gives it slightly more realistic feel. Okay, so that's simple as that. The other thing that I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into my render mode and see how this looks with the lighting effects. Now, as you can see, these shadows look a bit kind of janky. This is where we want to change to cycles. So I'm going to click on render over here, the render engine, and just change that to cycles. And you can kind of see you got this much nicer looking box now. Now, before we render anything out, we've got to go Shift A. So make sure you're in object mode when you do this. Shift A, mesh, plane, and then you're just going to hit the S button. And if you want to just double the size of it, you can just hit the 2. And then if you want to double that again, you just hit the 2 again. You've got yourself your nice big plane to kind of look down on your bento box. So that's basically that very, very first bento box. Nice, easy form, nice and simple. Then from here, you can check your little camera angle there, this is actually what would get rendered. Now, if you want to zoom in and kind of have a bit more control over the camera, you can click on this little guy over here, click on View, Camera to View. So we'll just go through that again. So it's just this little kind of arrow that sits over here. Open that up. You go into your little view mode here, and you're going to click Camera to View. And what that does is, as you kind of zoom in and move around, that's actually changing what will get rendered when you send this off to get rendered. So there you go, nice simple bento box. And then from here, we just click Render, Render Image, and you've got yourself your basic bento box. So next, we're going to move on to a slightly more complex version of that. So stay tuned for that. Good luck with doing this one. Once you've done that, let's see if you can challenge yourself to this next level. Okay, on to stage 2 now. So what we're going to do is I'm going to click on this little box over here, and I'm just going to hit the X button. Let's delete that and let's start all over again. So I'm going to Shift A, go to my mesh here and click a cube. And same again, I'm going to G, Z, 1 to put that cube nice and flush with my ground. I'm going to go again, Object, Set Origin, Origin to 3D Cursor, S, Z, and then shrink that down. So again, if any of that's sort of really going over your head, you might want to go back to that original tutorial and just familiarize yourself with some of those terms. Now, let's just go back to our little model mode over here so that we kind of aren't taking too much of the computer's memory as we work. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to create more of a rounded bento box. So kind of creating some more organic contours along this line. All right, so I've got my little base here. I'm going to go into my edit mode by hitting tab. I'm going to select my line select now, and I'm going to just select these little edges on the corners on each corner of my little cubic thing. Okay, going to now go to bevel over here, and I'm going to click and drag. Now, as you can see, that's just beveled a nice, clean, chamfered or mitered edge there. Before I click away, I'm going to click on this little bevel thing over here, and I'm just going to change my segments to perhaps 10. Now, what that's done is it's given me this kind of nice rounded version. Now, I'm going to click on my face tool, so back into edit mode, click on my face tool, click on this top bit, and bring this in. So I'm in set face now, and I'm just going to bring that in just that little bit, like so. Now I'm going to go to my Z tool. Now what you'll find now is if I go to my loop cut, see how it's not letting me cut through this bit anymore? So I'm going to need to, this is a bit of a shortcut, and there's better ways to do it, but just to simplify the process, we're just going to use the knife tool to make a cut from the top to the bottom, and then hit enter. And then I'm going to do the same again, cut from the top. Oops, might need to zoom in just a little bit for that. I'm just going to have to do it a little bit further away and then just sort of drag those lines across. Enter, and same again, going across ways 1 and 2. Now what I need to do is I've made this sort of a little bit thicker because I didn't want it to snap. So it's a bit annoying, but you're just going to need to go to your select tool now, grab this, grab that one, that one, that one, and that one. And you're just going to go GX to sort of drag that closer so that it's the same kind of width as this height is here. And same again for this side. This is a little bit thick. So I'm just going to grab that one, G and Y this time because we're going along the green line. And there we go. We've kind of similar story. We've sort of set this up. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to my Z mode again. Going to get my select tool, select my faces. Going to hover over the whole thing and then again just shift deselect anything that you don't want to be a wall. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go E and there we go. We've got sort of a much more rounded bento box. So that's pretty much it for that. Now, of course, what we can do is what you will find now that we've got these rounded things, we've kind of thrown off what's called the normals a little bit. So if we were to try to add a bevel now, let's go to bevel and now let's go to here. Oh, that's actually worked all right. That's not too bad. But what I might do is, because you've got these really round bits here, I might actually just go into my model mode again, select these internal lines. So I'm going to kill this bevel. Select these internal lines like so. And I'm going to bevel them manually instead of using that surface thing. So I'm just dragging that out and create my little segments there. Oh, that's caused a bit of a mess. What we might need to do is, let's consider just doing it one at a time instead. Like so. Like so. Let's see how this one's going to go. Oh yeah, it's getting there. It's getting a little bit messy. Like you can see there's a bit of mess happening with this mesh over here. But look, as long as we're trying for something pretty simple here, we can kind of just overlook that. So there we go. We've kind of created a slightly more complex version of our bento box. We're going to go back into our render mode. And as you can see, if we went to our camera here, now something you will notice, if you look really close, you can kind of see these facets here. See how it kind of, you can see the polygons. If you were to click on this, right click and go shade auto smooth, you can see those disappear. So from there, you'll be able to render that out. So what we're going to do for next time is the next one, we're going to build on this, make it a little bit more complex, and then start adding some textures in place. And then for the fourth stage, we're going to do the same thing again, but we're going to add some food into it. We're going to add a lid and we're going to sort of make a much more complete and finished render. All right, so time to make a much more complete and finished render as promised. So this time round, I'm going to pick up this existing bento box and I'm going to do a couple of things that are just going to make it that little bit more interesting and more nuanced. So now I'm going to click on my little view here. If that's lost again, you need to click on your little arrow, view, just change from camera to view, and I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so that my box is a little bit bigger so you can kind of see what's going on a little bit better. Then I'm going to go back to camera to view. Now I'm going to, selecting this, I'm going to hit my tab button, and I'm just going to go outside my camera view for this. Now what I want to do is I want to create a taper. So at the moment it's perfectly vertical each way, and typically bento boxes kind of taper that little bit. So I'm going to go to my little Z again. I'm going to select everything, and there you go. So I've selected basically the whole roof, and now all I need to do, because my origin has been set in this middle bit, it's going to make it really nice and easy to just hit the S button and create that real gentle taper to my bento box. So you can kind of see how that's getting lifted a little bit. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the E button to extrude that just that little bit more, because I want to kind of create a bit of a lip around this. Now I'm going to hold the Alt button And so you watch carefully with this on. I'm going to hit the Alt button and then click on this line. Oops, sorry, click on my faces over here. Click on this line here. And what that does is it selects the whole outer perimeter. So as long as your mesh is quite neat, this is going to work reasonably okay. Now something weird has happened over here. Have a look at that. That's kind of hasn't worked out. Let's just go back and fix this. If we hit the S button there. Okay, so something weird. There we go. Have a look at that. See, these are some of the sneaky things that can happen when you're working with Blender. As it gets more complex, weird things can happen. So you've really got to try to just keep a nice, clean mesh. Otherwise, it can give you some absolute nightmares. That wouldn't have been a nightmare, but things get worse and worse if you sort of let things go. So, okay, so I'm going to hit the E button now. And just extrude that a little bit. Now I'm going to face select, Alt, and I'm just going to click on this line and you're going to see how it selects that whole perimeter now. Now I'm going to, instead of just extruding, I'm going to extrude along normals, which kind of just pushes everything out in the direction that the polygon is facing. So if I was to click and drag now, you can see that it's just creating that little lip like so. See how it's just looking a little bit more finished now? And I'm going to do the same again. I've hit the Alt button and I've selected the whole perimeter around there. And I'm just going to extrude that along normals as well. So you can kind of see we've created this real beautiful little lip now. So it's looking much more sophisticated as a bento box. Now what we're going to do from here is we're going to start looking at adding some textures now to it. So we've just got our white bento box. Now I've got if we have a look over here, I've just got a little bamboo, a little canvas, and a little tomato texture. So let's start by just making the bento box a bamboo texture. So I'm going to click on my little textures over here, materials. I'm going to click new. I'm going to double click on that, and I'm just going to say bamboo. Now for the base color over here, I'm going to click on image texture, and then just select my bamboo. So I need to go to my desktop, textures, bamboo, and you can sort of see that that's added a reasonably nice bamboo. If I was to go into my tab here, A for select all, and click on my little UV over here, I can click on Smart UV Project, and that normally kind of makes the bamboo sort of wrapped around a little bit nicer. So that's looking kind of okay. We would then need to go to our UV editing over here, and you can kind of see what it's done to these are all of the shapes over here. So if I was to select all there and just make that much, much bigger, and might just S and X to sort of make them a bit thicker as well. Go back to my layout. You can kind of see that that bamboo is looking just a little bit nicer. I wouldn't say it's looking great. Let's go back to our UV and let's see if we can click on cube projection and see what that does. Look, that's a little bit nicer. Wouldn't say it's perfect, but you're just going to keep playing and go back to your UV editing now. Click on your S and X and perhaps make them a bit wider. Go back. Oh yeah, I wouldn't say that's working. Let's go to your UV editing, S and X. Maybe even shrink that down even more, but then make it bigger perhaps. Yeah, that's looking a little nicer. So you sort of look how the timber grain's kind of wrapping around it there. So that's pretty much it for that. What you can do from there is you might choose to perhaps just have the inside as a bamboo texture, and you might want the outside to be just a white texture. So what I've done is I've clicked on my little Alt button there, clicking on that one, holding the Shift and Alt button to select all of these. This is where it gets a bit fiddly. There we go. And now you can make that inside bamboo, but we can also hit the little plus button over here. Click on New and Assign. and we've made the outside plastic. So you can kind of see now that you've got this nice plastic outside. You know, white looks actually quite nice, but you might want to sort of maybe make it a more interesting colour depending on your audience. Whatever you want to do there, you know, maybe make it sort of an olive green or something like that. And there you go, you've started adding some textures in. As you can see, I haven't quite nailed that bottom bit, so I would have needed to have selected that to get that looking a little bit better. But again, going back to our little camera mode, and you can run that off as a render, and you can see that that's just looking just that little bit more refined and starting to look like a more professional, or at least a more distinctive bento box that's kind of got a unique and interesting style about it. All right, so on to this final stage. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to add a few little kind of interesting features to sort of lift that design just that little bit. And then we're going to add some food into the bento box. So let's get started. So what I want to do with this one is I want to now, in the bento box, I want to create these sort of inset bowls that you can kind of pull out. At the moment, it's just this single piece thing. So let's do that. So I've held the Alt button. So let's get out of camera mode, hold the Alt button, and I'm just holding the Shift and Alt button now to kind of collect this row as well. And you basically just want to select everything inside this bit here. So you can see, kind of collected that. Now what I want to do is I want to hit the Shift D button, and that duplicates. So do that and then hit the Enter button. So that's duplicated the faces. Now we want to separate those because we want to basically pull that and turn it into its own piece, because at the moment it's still joined in with the rest of it. So I'm going to hit the P button to do that, and then I'm just going to hit Enter. So separate by selection. Now what I can do is, if I go back to my object mode, I can actually select, if it's going to let me. There we go. I can actually select this inside bit here. So what I can do is I can S to shrink that down just that little bit. And G and Z to kind of bring it up. And then I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to A, select all, and I'm just going to extrude that along normals. Like so. Now that's done some funny stuff over here. So how about so what's happened there is that we've got some normals problems. So it's kind of shooting out and creating some problems. This sort of stuff happens a lot in Blender, so you kind of need to learn what might be happening and then think about ways you can solve it. So I'm going to go Control Z, start that again. And I'm going to now extrude region instead. Going to hit E and then Enter. So that creates that second layer. And then if I just hit S, see how I can just sort of shrink it down and it's creating that nice even thickness. So that's actually what I was trying to achieve. So if I was to go in now, click on this, get rid of these two, you can see that I've created this separate section. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do that for the rest of them. I'll fast forward through the rest of them because it's the same process. So bear with me for a sec. All right, and we're back. So we've created these kind of little individual bowls that you can actually kind of pull out. So what I might do with this one is I might just G and Y and kind of just drag this bowl out just to kind of hint that the bowls are kind of removable or replaceable, something along those lines. So what we're going to do now is we might just go ahead and add some food in from here. So as you would have seen, I've got my little tomato texture, so that's a nice easy one to add in. So I'm just going to go ahead and Shift A, make sure in object mode when you do this, Mesh, UV Sphere. Let's go back to this one to do this. GZ to kind of bring it up. And now you want to click on your little X button and we're just going to delete half of this UV sphere. So we want the tomatoes to obviously just be half. One, select the back faces, one, Select that little guy there. And now, go into your tomato, hit the Alt button and select that whole rim and just hit that S button. F button, sorry, for fill. F for fill. And now what you can do is, if you went into here, we're just going to click New. We're going to call this Tomato. We're going to make it red. And I'm going to duplicate this texture as well, Tomato 1. And I'm going to assign that. And I'm just going to make the base color an image again. And choose my little tomato texture in textures. Now we can go Shift A, UV, and we're just going to go Smart UV Project. See if that that doesn't look too bad. Obviously it's way out of alignment, but what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to grab this little circle here, selecting that, selecting that one there, select that circle, G. This is where it gets a bit complicated, but you basically want to get this circle, move it to the center of our little tomato here, make it bigger, and there you go. So if we went to layout now, you can see that we've created this little tomato over here. Now, of course, the surrounds, you don't want the tomato picture to be on that. So for the rest of the surrounds, I'm just going to select all of these layers here. Like so. And plus, and then I'm just going to create that back tomato there. And then you can right click and just shade auto smooth if you like for that tomato. So you've created this nice realistic looking tomato. So what we'll do is we'll go back to our little camera over here and GY, GX. If you don't know what I'm doing with these GYs and GXs, again, you might want to just go back to that original clip and just sort of familiarize yourself with why on earth I'm saying GY and what on earth that means. So I'm just going to sort of manually plop in a handful of tomatoes over here. So Shift D, R to rotate, Shift D to duplicate, G, Z, R, Y. Maybe just add one more over in this corner over here. Shift D, something like that. Go back to our little camera angle. Yeah, that looks pretty good. It's not the most realistic looking tomato you'll ever see in your life, but you know, it certainly looks good enough for the purpose of the exercise. Let's add some sauce into this one. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. I'm just going to Shift D, P. So that was that same thing again. Shift D to duplicate, and then P to kind of separate that out. Now I can just G and Z. Bring that up. S to kind of make it that little bit bigger. And I might just create a new material called sauce. And we'll maybe make this sort of like perhaps a soy sauce. You can scroll down. You can make it sort of perhaps a bit metallic. Drop the roughness. So you can kind of see now it's kind of got a bit of reflection to it. So there we go. We've kind of got a bit of tomato, a bit of soy sauce. You would continue along with that. So we might do perhaps a, let's get a cylinder. So mesh, cylinder, Z to sort of shrink it down, S like that. And let's make these maybe some spring rolls. We'll call this spring roll. Now you can make them much more realistic. It just sort of depends on how much time you want to spend on it. But for the purpose of the exercise, I might just make them just simple as this. I think that looks okay. You kind of know roughly what they are. And then I'm just going to place those in as well. So go out of my camera view and I'm just going to fill up this little box over here. Shift D, R, Shift D, R, Shift D, R, Z. Now that's all you really need to do. You could go ahead, we could drop the specular on these so they sort of look a little bit more kind of realistic as spring rolls. And And that's effectively it. You've got yourself your nice little bento box. If we go back into our camera angle here, you can kind of zoom in, and that's effectively it. You get your bento box, you've added some foods into it, and it's starting to look like a nice professionally finished design. So that's effectively it for now. Hopefully that'll get you to a stage once you've been through this where you can really learn how you can use all of those tools to create something more refined or to come up with your own ideas moving forward from there. Think about things like putting a lid on it. Now, the last thing I might do is if I just hit Shift D here and then Z, I could actually just get this lid, S and Z, turn it upside down, and then I've got my lid. R, X, go over to my X over here and just G, Z that there, back to my camera mode, and I've just drawn myself a nice little lid as well. So once you kind of get your head around those tools, it's really easy to do something quite special. And then you might go ahead and say, oh look, let's improve the lighting. So I'm just going to Shift D. So I've added another light here. You could grab your little bottom here and you could kind of maybe make that a little bit more metallic so that it sort of, has a bit of a sheen to it. So it's starting to look a little bit more like a studio image now. And if you were to grab this, if you were to, maybe make that sort of a bit lighter, you could make that reflective as well. So it sort of looks a bit more like a, so if we were to maybe add that to that, you could make that metallic, drop the roughness, and there you go. You've changed those to kind of steel inset canisters as well. So moving forward from there, there's a million different things you can do. You could do the same with that bamboo as well. So if you were to, kill this image texture and just disconnect that, make that metallic. There you go. You've just turned your bento box, your bamboo bento box, into something much more kind of, I suppose, Western, like it's made out of those tins and those stainless steel. So much more you can do from there. I'm not going to harp on any more than that. Hopefully this has given you a really good idea of what you should be able to achieve reasonably easily with your bento box. Good luck with the rest of it, and I can't wait to see what ideas you come up with.